Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another Battle to the Death for you. Today we have a pretty epic one. It's not a two-way, it's not a three-way. It is a four-way battle to the death with knives that I consider to be kind of in that large-ish, 8-ish inch overall length size, and in that slightly more than EDC but not quite heavy-duty use category. All four of these pretty popular knives, all four very desirable knives. And all four that have gotten pretty positive reviews here overall. Some of them have faced off each other individually, but this is the first time they are all facing off all together. And as usual, I do have to say, this is brought to you by Southern Edge Knife Works, the usual sponsor of all of our battles to the death. You guys seem to really like these videos. And Southern Edge Knife Works does a very good job of making more of these possible by getting knives in my hand that I wouldn't have normally had and just making them more possible. And in exchange to you guys, you can go to southernedgeknifeworks.com and use the code SDSEKW at checkout and get 15% off and free shipping. Pretty good deal. That's the free shipping just for the continental US. If you live outside of that, it's $15, still very reasonable, especially if you're living in Europe or whatever. Very good pricing on the shipping as far as that goes. So let's get going. Who is facing off against who here, or whom against whom? I never know how to use that properly. I've been a writer for 20 years, still haven't figured that out. First up, we have the Ferrum Forge Mordax, sent by Drop, distributed by Drop, and made by ProTech here in the USA. You guys know I really like this knife. It's a pretty darn cool one. We're just going to talk about the aluminum one. There was one distributed directly through Ferrum Forge. It was titanium, but we're going to be talking about the aluminum one that you can actually just go buy right now. If you go to drop.com right now, it used to be Mass Drop. They are still available. So as you guys know, I try not to use anything you can't get in these. Next up is also a fairly exclusive knife, but another one that's always in stock. You can get one of these on knifeworks.com. This is the Ritter RSK MK1-G2. That's an even bigger mouthful than the Mordax's full name is. Really, really cool design. It used to be made roughly in kind of a somewhat similar version of this by Benchmade, now made by Hogue in California. And just a really cool knife that you can get straight through knifeworks.com. As I said, they come in a few different versions. They always have at least one version in stock since they've come out, so I still feel it's a good one to include. This is the basic one with just, the stonewash blade and the black handles. It's my preferred version. We'll get more to that when we talk about design and aesthetics and all that. Next up, this is definitely just a regular full production knife that a lot of people really enjoy, myself included. We have the Benchmade 560K-1 Freak, or more commonly known as the Super Freak, and that's probably what I'm going to call it through the rest of this. It's been an extremely popular model since it came out, M4 steel, all that good stuff, the really cool G10 handles. We'll talk more about specs when we get to all that stuff and about the individual things when we get to the categories, but really, really awesome knife. And then lastly, we have, it's odd to say the oldest of the group, but it is. It's been out for the longest. This is the Spyderco Shaman. It feels like just yesterday this thing was a brand new knife we were all scrambling to get. Now it's been out for a little while. Still the same stats as it was originally, S30V, the nice contour G10 handles, all that good stuff. So how does this work? It's going to work roughly the same as before, except the scoring is just going to be a bit different. We have our same 7 categories as always. Design and aesthetics, quality, blade, ergonomics, carry, deployment, and value. We're going to rank the categories 1 through 4. They will get points awarded in kind of reverse order for that. So first place gets 4 points, second place gets 3 points, third place gets 2 points, last place gets a point. And then we'll add them up at the end and pick a winner. And I will say, there is a winner on this. There is not a tie. There's a tie in some of the categories, but there is not a tie overall. So please stay tuned for that. Let's do some specs before we get too much farther. So we are going to start out with, I'm going to have to move all these kind of out of the way here. We are going to start out actually with the Ritter RSK MK1-G2. You have an overall length of 8.15 inches, a blade length of 3.44, making it by ever so slightly the shortest one here, a handle thickness of 0.60 inches, and a weight of 4.5 ounces. Now we'll swap them out here and we will do the Drop Ferrum Forge Mordax, made by ProTech. God, I can't wait till I get done with all these stats and I can just start calling them Mordax and Ritter. All right, you have an overall length of 8.25 inches, blade length of 3.6 inches, blade thickness of 0.5 inches, and a weight of 0.85 ounces. making it one of the lighter ones here. Next up, we will do the Shaman. We have shortest and overall length at dead on 8 inches, blade length of 3.6 inches. You have a blade thickness of 0.15 inches, handle thickness of 0.53, and a weight of 5.2 ounces. And lastly, we will bring out, as I knock something over, the Super Freak. Overall length of 8.46, making it the longest here, 3.6 inch blade, blade thickness of 0.11 inches, handle thickness of 0.62 inches, and a weight of 4.3 ounces. Now let's bring them all out here. Let's start the scoring. This is the most notes I've ever made for one of these, obviously, because there's 4 knives, and I actually have a lot to say about all 4 of them, because all 4 of them are pretty good. None of these, no one here is a loser. I don't have any bummers in here. They're all worth your money, but hopefully this will help you decide which one you want the most. So design and aesthetic. We're going to go from worst to first is how we're going to try to do all these. In last place, but not complete last place because there was a tie for first. So with 2 points, we have the Ritter. I do really like the look of it. I have no hardcore objections to it. I think part of this is that it does look so similar to the Benchmade Ritters that we've had forever. Maybe I'm just kind of used to it. That might be a problem there. That might just be a bias of just being used to it. It's a very handsome design. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I am not a giant fan of the starburst pattern on here. And it doesn't come in a whole lot of colors. Black handles are orange, and coated or uncoated are kind of your choices. The black looks okay, but I hope you can see this on camera. It just looks kind of dry. And this is the second one of these I've had. They used to be M390 in the first run. This one is 20 CV, which is basically the same. But they've always looked just kind of dry. And I don't know how to put that. I've put, mineral oil and stuff on them to try and make them a little bit more vibrant, and that does work for a short term, but it always just kind of eventually soaks in or comes off and it goes away. And like I said, I'm just not a fan of the look of that pattern. It's fine. There's nothing really hugely objectionable about it, but it amongst all these, it goes in last place, but that's not really saying a whole lot because most of these are pretty darn good looking knives, I do have to say. In third place would be the Shaman. Now, some of the sprint runs look amazing, but that's not what we're going with here. We are going with the production version that you can just go buy right now. The Shaman has come out in several sprint runs. Some of them are absolutely gorgeous. The Cocobolo one, or whatever kind of wood it is. The wood-handled one, maybe it's rosewood, I don't remember, with the Rex 45. Gorgeous, gorgeous knife. And not much more than it is to buy a regular one, but they come and they go very quickly. So we're just going by the standard one. I really like the shape of it overall. It's just not, particularly remarkable. So that is why I'm putting this in third place. Tied for first is the Super Freak and the Protect. Now, normally I would knock the Super Freak down because this is the only color scheme you get. You can't get a serrated blade, I think, if I remember correctly, but this is the only color scheme you get. Normally I knock knives down for that, but the only color scheme you can get is pretty darn cool. I'm not usually a big fan of coated blades, but Benchmade's actually holds up really well. So I can't even knock it down that far for that. And I just really love this G10, what they've done with it, this multi-layered G10 and the red accents and everything. The full, Darth Maul, Sith, or Deadpool spec, whichever you prefer to call it. It's a very cool looking knife, and I can't knock it for that. But I have to give a tie with the Mordax because it doesn't only just come in this plain aluminum. You can get it that's milled out. You can get it several different colors. You can get a totally blacked out version. There are a whole bunch of different choices for it. I've actually had 2, and one of the prototypes that was plain aluminum, and then I sent it back and got this nice blue one. It's just nice to have those choices, and all the choices look good, and the shape is not at all objectionable. I can't see anybody really disliking that shape a whole lot. So it gets tied for first in the design and aesthetics. So we have 4, 4, 2, 3 in points so far. If you're scoring at home, quality-wise, this one was pretty close. We have 2 sets of ties, basically. So tied for first, or tied for second. I said I'd go worst to first, didn't I? So tied for second, we have the Shaman and the Super Freak. Spyderco and Benchmade, pretty known quantities, quality-wise. I haven't heard any complaints about the Super Freak. I know Benchmade sometimes gets some flack, but I've had no problems with mine, so I have to go by the one that I have, and this one has been completely reliable, and it gets a fair amount of use, and it's been completely reliable. Nothing wrong. Same with the Shaman. Nothing wrong. As far as, just production quality and feel, they both feel pretty equally expensive. One is much more than the other. We'll get to that when we get to the value section. Yeah, it's pretty equal as far as that goes. So I have to call these two a tie in quality, which would obviously mean, since I said there are 2 ties, tied in quality for first would be the Hogue Ritter RSK MK1-G2 and the Ferrum Forge. ProTech quality is outstanding. There's absolutely nothing, no flaws with this knife whatsoever, quality-wise, that I can talk about at all. The Hogue, same way. They both came perfectly centered. They both have had no problems. Like I said, there's that little thing with the scales and the G10, but I think it's just the amount of milling they did. I don't think that's really like a quality issue. I think it's just a design thing. And they're both extremely well built, and just both of these feel more expensive than these two. When we get to the value section, you'll find out that one is not more expensive than those two. So let's go on to the next category. So if you missed out, it's 4-3 for these ones. Now, the blade. Okay, we're going to do in descending order again. We had another tie for last, I guess you would call it. And the tie for last is the Mordax and the Shaman. The Shaman is about, I have the notes here, 28 thousandths behind the edge. It's a pretty good slicer. I do like it. But it's got very thick blade stock. So it's still not the most amazing slicer in the world. It's pretty good, but it's not great. And has the worst blade steel here, S30V. And you're competing against 2 knives with 20 CV and one with M4. It's not going to win. It just isn't going to win. I just can't give it the win. And it's a fine blade. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but they're a lot better here in this category. I really wish this was an S35 VN knife for other reasons that, again, we'll get to in the value section. The ProTech Ferrum Forge Mordax, I'm just going to change up how I say it every time. You would think, oh, easily, that's got to be better than the Shaman because it's 20 CV. And it's thinner blade stock. You would think so, but it's, what is it? I have to make sure that I have this right. It's 32 thousandths behind the edge. It just has a very, very, very thick grind. And for a knife that I otherwise adore, that's a bit frustrating. I do have to say, it still slices fine. There's nothing wrong with it. None of these are like terrible slicers. Very good tip on it and all that stuff. But I can't put it above the Shaman, even though the Shaman is much inferior blade steel. I just can't put it above it because it is so thick behind the edge, and I'm kind of baffled as to why that is. And everything else that ProTech did right making this knife and that Ferrum Forge did right in designing it, that just kind of baffles me that it's that thick behind the edge. So we have in, I guess it would be third place, since we have a tie for second place, since we have a tie for third, we have the Ritter RSK MK1-G2, 20 CV again, pretty thin behind the edge, 23 thousandths, not too bad at all. That great steel, awesome edge. I do have to say, factory edges. By the way, you're going to see a very shiny edge on this Spyderco. I did not mention that. This is not a factory edge. This is a custom edge put on by the person who traded it to me. So ignore the shininess of it. I'm going by my experiences with the factory edge and the one I had previously. Forgot to say that up front, so I'm getting it in there now. But for factory edges, this one is just great. It's damn near mirror polished. Best edge. Excellent steel. I do have to say, I do really like it, and I like the 20 CV and all that stuff, but I'm still going to narrowly give the win and the first place points to the Super Freak. And why is that? Because it has M4 steel, which I love, and the edge, the factory edge, is not as good as the Ritter's, but it's close enough. M4 I found is not super hard to sharpen. It just takes a while, but it's actually still pretty easy to sharpen. It's just a joy to use. It holds an edge for freaking ever, and I just love M4. And blade stock thicknesses are pretty close. The thickness behind the edge, this is let me look at my notes here. 24 thousandths behind the edge. They're close, and it's just everything's pretty close, and it's just better steel. And I have to go, even though it's a coated blade, I have to go with a win to the Super Freak on the blade. Now, Ergonomics. This one is also close because none of these suck. None of them suck. I enjoy having all of them in my hand. I use all of them regularly, and I do really enjoy it when I do. That said, last place is going to be the Ritter. And it's, again, mostly because I'm just not a huge fan of those super grippy scales. Obviously, that's something that Doug Ritter likes, and it does look all right, I guess, but it's just a bit much, and it's a bit jimp-tastic across the top here. There's just a bit more jimping than I think I need in my daily life. This may be something you would rank a lot higher if you're going to be, working somewhere where your hands get slippery. I could see why you would like this more. And also, finally, there is a bit of a hot spot from this deep carry pocket clip. You can definitely feel that in the back of your hand. Not a big deal, but you can feel it. So that's why that is going in last place with 2 points, because second place is a tie between the Mordax and the Super Freak. I would probably give it to the Mordax overall, except for that these aluminum scales are a bit slick if you get the non-milled version. And the milled version, in my experience, is a bit too milled, and it has some sharp spots in it. So I have to give, I can't quite give it, I can't quite break the tie between this and the Super Freak is what I'm saying. I do like having it, being able to choke up. I do like that a lot. I do like a whole lot about it. It's very comfortable in hand. Nothing really super wrong with it. You can feel that pocket clip a little bit, but I wouldn't call it a hot spot. But again, it just doesn't quite hit the right level of grippy. I wish there was a medium somewhere where you could get one that's minorly milled, and I would probably like it. But if you get the full milled version, it's very heavily milled, and I think maybe a bit too much. So, and also it ties with the Super Freak. Super Freak also excellent. Really like having it in hand. No real issues with it. It fills the hand pretty well. I do kind of wish I could choke up on it all the time. I do always feel like that, but other than that, ergonomically, it's great. It's still really good. But the winner is the Shaman. The Shaman just fills your hand so well. Those nicely contoured scales, they're nice and thick, and no hot spot from the pocket clip. You can choke up, which I do really like on a knife this size, and it's just excellently comfortable in the hand. I know some people have said stuff about sharp things around the G10. This is the second one I've had. Neither of them have bothered me one bit, so I'm kind of just discounting that. If you find that to be an issue, sorry, but the two that I've had have not had that, and it's just a pleasure to have in the hand. So fairly narrowly, because all these are really good, but fairly narrowly, we're going to give the win in this category to the Shaman. So that means 4, 3, 2. Now we come to the carry section. We're going to put all these aside because I'm going to bring out Yield Wranglers Mark II. We will bring them out in the order that they finished. We did have a tie for first place. So here we go. In last place, which is third points-wise, with 2 points, we have the Mordax. Nothing wrong with it as far as it's one of the slimmest knives here. It's, I believe, the lightest knife here. It has a nice deep carry clip, although there is still a bit sticking out. I didn't really penalize it too heavy for that. But the reason why it is finishing in last is that flipper tab, though. And it has some jimping on it. It is, it's not quite as Nick Shabazz would call it a pocket pecker extraordinaire, but it's you can see it from where you're standing. You do definitely feel that pocket clip when you carry it. Other than that, it carries excellently, but this is facing a field of excellence, so it's going to lose. Mostly it's because that flipper tab. It doesn't take up a ton of room in the pocket. Let me fold these back so you can see that. It's not bad there, but you can see how much that flipper tab sticks out when it's in your pocket. And it's got some sharpish edges on the, some sharpish edges on the back of it. I'm Sean Connery all of a sudden. Your blue knife has some sharp edges. But you have to remember that. And so whenever I carry it, I do think about that. I think about what I put in the pocket. The rest of these, I don't think about it. So it only gets 2 points. In the next place would be the Super Freak. The Super Freak in the way that it comes, to be specific. This has the split arrow, or penis clip as a lot of us call it. Not deep carry. I do use it with a deep carry clip from Benchmade. At the time I got this, you could get these for free. You can't anymore, but they still charge a very reasonable price. If you call them and ask for one, it's not too bad. But with the standard clip, it sticks out a fair bit. And other than that, it just carries pretty good. There's nothing really special about it. We'll get to more about that later, what I consider something special about it. A fair bit sticks out. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't take up a whole lot of room. There's no flipper tab sticking out or anything, but it carries fine for the size that it is. So that is where that one is finishing. Tied, and I'm surprised by this, would be the Shaman and the Ritter. Why are they tied? Well, the Shaman makes it into a tie. I wanted to put the Shaman lower because it's not deep carry. There's a fair bit sticking out, but the Shaman is one of the biggest, heaviest knives here. And in your pocket, it absolutely does not feel like it. For carrying a big, heavy knife with big, thick blade steel, it just carries really, really well. Yeah, there's a bit sticking out, but aftermarket options galore as far as that goes. But it's just shockingly easy to get your hand past. Just shockingly easy for the size that it is. Every time I carry the Shaman, I'm just like, wow, I can't believe this knife is this big. It carries smaller than most of the other knives here. And it just amazes me. And I have to give them some credit for that. I don't know if it's how they angle the pocket clip or whatever, but it just doesn't take up a ton of room in the pocket. It just carries amazingly well. It is one of the nicest ones to carry, one of the easiest ones to forget that is in your pocket, if you can forget that much weight being in your pocket, which is not entirely likely, but some people do. I wanted to give the win to the Hogue because it does come standard with a deep carry clip, which I very much appreciate. And other than that, it carries just as nice as the others. Still easy to get your hand by, all that stuff. There is some writing on the clip if you don't like that, but that doesn't really bother me too much. But the reason why is this. Put it all the way back in here. That's why it didn't get the overall win. It's not a pocket destroyer by any means. I've carried one of these a lot. Like I said, this is my second one, and it hasn't like torn up pockets or anything. But yeah, the texture on that G10, you can hear that zhit, zhit when you take it in and out of the pocket. So that's something to keep in mind. I think it would wear out a pocket eventually if this was your only knife and you were constantly taking it in and out. So that is why it's only tied for first and didn't win. Now let's talk about deployment. This is a complicated one, except for who finished first. So let's just set all these out here. And let's get through it. Deployment. In last place, we have the Shaman. It's a compression lock. They're a lot of fun. You can Spidey flick it, all that cool stuff. You would think it would finish higher, but the Shaman has a flaw. And it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers some people, but it is a definite thing. When you close said compression lock, you see this little tab here they have. It goes right where your finger is, holding down that compression lock. So it makes it really hard to do the fun drop shutty stuff because it's in the way. So you kind of got to move your finger out of the way at the last second, or do that kind of two-stage thing I just did. It's really like, it's just not as fidgety as the average compression lock, like your PM2 or something like that. It's just not as fidgety. And I wish it was, I really do, but it just isn't quite there. Other than that, yeah, usual Spyderco stuff. And it's just, it's still fun to fidget with, but not nearly as fun as it could be. And that is just always going to bother me. So that is in last place with only 1 point. In second to last place is, quite shockingly, the Super Freak. Axis lock, it's a lot of fun. It is extremely drop shutty. Absolutely. Very drop shutty. But it's better explained to bring up the Hogue that finished ahead of it than it is to explain why this finished behind it, if that makes any sense. Extremely drop shutty. You can do all the cool things with it. But the Hogue finishes above it. So Hogue uses a bit stiffer spring, and I like it. Is it as drop shutty as the Benchmade? No. But it's darn close to it. It's extremely close, as you can see. It's still a lot of fun to play with. You can do all the stuff, but it's got a little bit stiffer spring, and I kind of like that not quite as drop shutty feel, because the Super Freak, it will occasionally bounce off. Yeah, it'll bounce off the scales, or bounce off the stops, I'm sorry. And this never does. I kind of like it, and I think maybe just my natural hand actions work better with the Hogue. But that's not the winner. Obviously, the winner is the one left, the Mordax. Great detent. It's just fun to flip. And I like a button lock. Button locks are so much fun. It's just a blast. This knife is so much fun to fiddle with. It's smooth as glass and just one of my absolute favorite fidget knives that I own. It just happens to be a not very large, but a somewhat large, useful knife to boot. So winner on this one pretty easily goes to the Drop Ferrum Forge ProTech Mordax. So that brings us to our final category, which is value. You guys may have noticed through this video, and I'm sorry if it annoyed you, I'm kind of avoiding the topic of price. I've mentioned it a little bit here and there, kind of anecdotally, but I haven't really laid out the prices. There's a reason for that, because one of these is a very clear loser, and the value section is going to, it determines the outcome of this whole freaking thing, basically. So let's just get to it. In last place, distantly, I almost consider giving it no points, but it would be Spyderco Shaman. Second most expensive knife here with the worst materials. When this knife came out, it was 155 bucks, and we all jumped on it, and we all loved it. Then it went up to 182 the next year. And still, it was all right. Now it's $202. You're getting the worst blade steel. Not going to say the worst handle material. These are really nice G10 scales. I can't knock that. Very well built and everything. No issues there. 202 bucks? No. I mean, it's just, I've said this before in other videos. It's not a big surprise. I think if you guys have watched previous videos of mine about Shaman, you will already know this is coming. It is in distant last place. So put that one aside. In third place would be the Drop Ferrum Forge ProTech Mordax, whichever order you want to say that in. The most expensive knife here, but extremely well made. One of the best blade steels here. I like the aluminum handles. It comes in a bunch of options. It's a bit more for some of those options, but not too much. I think it's a fairly reasonable price. I'm not really horrified by it. Some people seem to not like it much at all, but I'm not really horrified by it. But it's not as good as the other two. So I have to put this in a third place, but not a distant third place, even though it's the most expensive knife here, to the Mordax. ProTech just does great work, and it feels like every bit of a ProTech, because it is every bit of a ProTech. Just because it says drop on it does not make it any less of a ProTech than your normal ProTechs. So in third place would be the Super Freak. As far as Benchmades go, 191.25 with M4 and these really nice G10 handles, really, really nicely done. They are gorgeous. They look like, $120 aftermarket scales. They really, really do. So I can't knock it too much there. But, the lack of choices, you knock it a little bit for that. But I have to put it still in second, because it is 191.25. Not bad at all. This is not a bad value. So we were with Benchmade. Sometimes you get some that are really overpriced, and you get some that are really good. Like right now, you can get the S30V Presidio 2 CF Elite, the big one, it's $130, you know, which is kind of a bargain. But then you get some other Benchmades that are just insane, like the bug out prices are kind of nuts. This one is actually pretty good. It's not bad at all, but it doesn't win because it is $191.25. And I haven't mentioned the price of the Ritter Hogue RSK MK1-G2 because it is $159.95 for a 20 CV, same blade steel you're getting in the Mordax. G10 handles, yeah, I did mention that they look a bit dry, but it's not like the end of the world. And it's just extremely stoutly built, feels excellent in the hand. I love Hogue's build quality. It's superb. Their screws are great. Everything is just really nice on the Hogues. It's definitely got better screws than the Benchmade does, and it's cheaper. Cheapest one here. So pretty handy win value-wise for the Ritter. So where does that leave us? Well, you have, drum roll, I guess. We can do that. It's going to shake the camera, but so be it. In last place, kind of unsurprisingly, the Shaman. If it was still the 155, it would be competing for the win. If it was the 182, it would be in the conversation. But no, it winds up with 18 points, pretty far behind everybody else because of the value section, really. That's the primary reason why. It just isn't there. It just isn't there for S30V. It has a big slab S30V, I guess, if you're paying for S30V by the ounce, maybe, I don't know, but that's why it finishes a pretty distant last place. With 21 points in third place, I'm sorry. In third place, we have the Ferrum Forge ProTech Mordax, released by Drop, the Drop by Ferrum Forge dash whatever, Mordax. I'm sorry. Those names are really hard to say. Really cool knife. Absolutely the most fun to play with. The most fun one to have in your pocket. And if this had a thinner behind the edge, it would probably also be competing for the win. May even actually win. But just that blade, that thickness behind the edge lets it down. And it's aluminum scales. Not everybody loves that. But I really do enjoy this knife. I'm not knocking it by putting it in 3rd out of 4. It's still really cool. I'm still going to use it. I'm still going to carry it. I still love it because it does that. And it's just so much fun. It's just so much fun. And the blade is still fine. It's just not quite as slicey as these other two. So both of these knives got 22 points, but there's a tiebreaker. And I always make value the tiebreaker. And the winner is the Ritter because it crushes it in the value category. So, and that's the tiebreaker. So it didn't just win the value category, it really won it. This went up a little bit since I had these two face off head to head, and the Ritter still narrowly won. But now the Super Freak has gone up just a tick in price, not much, but just a little bit. I think it was like $6 or $7. So it's just even more of a win for the Ritter RSK MK1-G2 made by Hogue. Really, really cool knife. I do enjoy it a lot, but I'm still not going to knock the Super Freak because I've said before, I had both of these. I bought them both at almost exactly the same time. This is the same Super Freak I had. I had the M390 Ritter, which again, almost exactly the same blade steel. And I sold it because I carried this one more after I put the deep carry clip on it, but then I missed it and I wanted one back again. So I got another one. And it didn't get loaned to me, nothing like that. I just went out and paid full boat and just bought another one because I saw they were back in stock and I just wanted one. So I still probably, end of the day, long term, maybe I'll wind up carrying the Super Freak more because I just like the M4 and I just really like the look of it. But this is definitely a better buy. This is definitely a better buy. So I'm pretty happy with the way the scores came out in the end because I do think this is the one that I would keep if I had to just keep any of them. If gun to my head, I had to get rid of the other 3. This is probably the one I would keep. I think it's the best just user knife for its category, especially value considered. It is. So hope you guys have enjoyed this. This is a long one, and I apologize for that, or maybe I don't. I don't know. What else do you guys have to do? A lot of us are all stuck sitting at home right now. This is being recorded in late March of 2020, so we all know what happened. If you're watching this in the future, hope everything came out all right. I've been Brian. Have a good one. See you next time.